Hey watercolor artists, today we're diving into one of my favorite parts of this medium, the saturated wet on wet technique. If you've ever watched paint bloom, spread, and blend, this is where watercolor feels intuitive and atmospheric. To begin, I start with a fine mist spray bottle, a soft wide brush, and 100% cotton watercolor paper. I'm using a sheet of 140-pound cold pressed paper. I fully dampen both the back and the front of the paper, and as it absorbs that moisture, it naturally adheres to a plexiglass panel. You can also use gator board or corrugated plastic as long as the surface is smooth enough. The key is giving your paper a stable, non-absorbent backing so it stays evenly wet for longer. I begin adding my paints, working from larger brushes and moving down to smaller ones as I go, and this just helps to keep everything loose and atmospheric. And you'll see that as I'm adding my paint to the paper, there's no hard edges. I just have these beautiful, soft, atmospheric leaves and kind of a rough overall idea of where I want my hydrangeas to be. Now I begin with some smaller brushes, and at this point I begin to add more saturated paint. So the mixture on my palette resembles the consistency of heavy cream. It has less water, more paint ratio, and this way as I apply my paint on the paper, it doesn't spread quite as far. I like to use a variety of brushes so that I can get different shapes. Here I'm using a quill, and I really like this brush because it's a soft brush and I can get some really fluid leaf shapes and lines using it. And I also like to use this filbert brush called the Blooms brush by Princeton just to add some different petal shapes, and I'm coming in with a shadowy color, a purple mixed with some cobalt blue for the shadows within this hydrangea. And while everything is still damp, I'm going to begin lifting some of the paint off the paper using some different synthetic brushes, including this angled flat. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm using a brush that's just slightly damp, so it's similar to a sponge, where it will pick up some of that color and leave a soft, subtle highlight. As I continue to work, I occasionally spritz my paper with this fine mist spray bottle, and that keeps everything nice and flat on my work surface. And as the paper begins to dry, this is where I add my harder edges, and that just means more crisp detail. And this is a process that can take some time, so I will be exploring this in the next video.